welcome back for week number 3 of the Scores and Odds College Football Betting Breakdown Show. I'm going to be your host, Sean PSU Fans 2 Newsham. Joining me as always, Alex Fearmyturtle Hardin. Alex, how are you doing after week 2? You were able to make up a little bit of ground on me.
Yeah, picked up a half game on you. Went 2-1, better showing than 0-3, so that's good. Week 3, not great. There's not a lot of great matchups, but hey, there's football to be played and bets to be made. So we will be walking through about 12 of the top games this weekend. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a gross week here, but a little bit of week 2 breakdown for the bets that we had last week. So I like Houston +3. It was a push and ended up 33-30 in double overtime. Luckily, Texas Tech got the ball second and scored a touchdown, so they didn't take the extra point. I had USC -8.5. They won 41-28, and honestly, it was probably a greater margin than that. Would have been favorable for USC, but if they were able to keep it close, Stanford was to at least keep it reasonable. And then I had the turd of the week, which I talked about. I liked Iowa -3.5. They actually lost 10-7. I really should have just taken the under in that game because what we expected that turd to be, it was, and it was gross. So Alex, do you want to go over the bets that you had last week?
Yeah, I had Texas +20.5, which didn't need those points. Almost won straight up, so I felt pretty good about that one. Had Mississippi State, Arizona under 59.5. That just squeaked through, but I feel pretty good about that play. And then Arizona State +11.5. I lost that one, although they were in it for most of the second half. They just kind of let up a couple scores at the end. So 2-1, we'll take it in the positive.
Yeah, I would say what's funny to me so far is of my 6 bets, 4 of them have been within 1.5 points, and then the other 2 have both been really close too. Whereas like your Texas game, like Texas should have probably won that game outright. They had a lot more chances. They just ended up in the red zone and just could not punch the ball into the end zone at all, no matter what they did. So it definitely was a situation that you probably could have ended up winning that game outright, like you said. All right, guys, we're going to go into the games for this week. First game of the week we will have on Friday night. Florida State travels to Louisville to play the Cardinals. We have Florida State is around -2.5 here. Opened up as a pick'em game. The total has gone up to 56. So, Alex, what is your thoughts here on the first game we have of the week?
I don't love either the side or the total here. It should be a pretty interesting game with just Florida State squeaking through to get the win versus LSU. Jordan Travis has looked pretty solid. They brought in a lot of weapons. They're pretty deep. They rotated a lot of the skill positions. Did notice that Louisville has allowed some big rushing games from the quarterback in the past. So interesting to see how often Travis takes off here. And then like on the flip side, we have Malik, who bounced back from a terrible week 1 to have a pretty good showing versus UCF. So now he gets a tougher defense, but it is at home. So it should be a good game to actually watch. But at these numbers, I don't have anything on the side or total. What about you?
Yeah, I actually, of the 2 games on Friday, it's definitely the more appealing game. The other game looks like a turd to me. I'm not interested in that one at all. Like you said, Malik rebound, he still struggled a bit. They really struggled offensively against UCF despite being able to pull out the win. Their defense has actually looked pretty decent in that game, so that was a good thing. But like you said, Florida State was able to pick up the win against LSU. They looked good. I think if anything here, I would take the over, but I agree. I don't really like anything in this game. Should be a decent game to watch, though. We have both teams with a mobile quarterback that can just make an explosive play happen at any time. So definitely think that this game could be a pretty appealing game to watch, which is more than I can say about the other game on the night. So that's a plus. All right, next game is going to be Georgia traveling to South Carolina. We saw South Carolina put up a turd last week. They lost. This game opened at 16. As you see, it's moved to 24.5. The over is a 52. It's moved up a little bit from the open. I probably prefer Georgia in this game, but I don't think I would touch either side. Georgia is a much better team than South Carolina. We know Georgia's probably the best team in the country. It's probably pretty clear the best team in the country. I think they're very similar to last year. Their defense maybe lost a bit of talent, but they just had more talent there ready to go. The offense is the same. It's bland, but it's going to get the job done against 99% of teams in the country. Stetson Bennett serviceable enough to get the job done for what they need. The issue is 24.5. It's hard for Georgia to just blow people out because their offense just isn't an explosive set. and it's just not the best offense. So like to win by 24.5 is difficult. If this was at 16, which the open was, I would have been all over Georgia. I think with the current total or the current spread being 24.5, it's a bit more of a risk there. What's your thoughts on this one?
I mean, I can't really imagine betting this game. Can't imagine playing anyone in DFS from this game. I can't imagine even watching this game. So, I mean, Georgia is insanely talented, but I don't know if they're going to bury South Carolina here. The line looks fine. Like, to me, it's just, okay, Georgia's playing. They're going to win this week. What's the next game? That's kind of my approach here.
Yeah, I mean, I know you and I share the same thoughts. Like, we hate watching Georgia. Georgia's not a fun team to watch because their offense isn't explosive. Their defense is just so good that the other team has no chance to move the ball unless they play like Alabama. If they play like the top teams, it's maybe an okay game. Otherwise, it's just terrible to watch.
I do have one question for you. Do you think they're kind of hiding Brock Bowers a bit until they need him? Like, it seemed like he only has a few targets on the season. I thought he'd be more of a featured player. But, I mean, like you said, they get up by 3 touchdowns and rotate in like 8 players at each position.
I mean, I think part of it is that, and then part of it is just that's their rotational situation. Like, if he doesn't catch a touchdown like the first 3 touchdowns, then you're just going to have a rotational nightmare where it's going to be hard for him to really showcase. But I do think we'll see, like, against better teams, he does play a bit more. So it's a situation where I think it's kind of a little bit of a combination of both. But yeah, Georgia to me is always a like must not watch TV. Like, they're just not fun in any way during the game to watch. All right, next game we have Oklahoma, Nebraska. So this opened at 4.5. It has moved to 12. We are seeing some major movements here, by the way, some massive movements. Scott Frost is out for Nebraska, so we have a coaching change there. They have been abysmal to start the year. I actually still like Oklahoma minus 12. That is one game that I do think Oklahoma just destroys them. I think Oklahoma's been good enough in their game. They've been able to move the ball. They've looked appealing. Like this, they struggled a bit last week earlier in the game, but eventually they got the ball moving. Nebraska has just been atrocious, and it just looks very, very bleak for them. I do think that maybe there will be a little bit of a help by the coaching change here, but again, this is a much better team, Oklahoma. So I do like Oklahoma still, even with the line movement that we've seen. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I wonder if this is going to be one of those games where like the home team comes out with like an emotional bounce back in like the first quarter and you think it's going to be a game. And then like by the start of the second quarter, they're like, oh, wait, we're in Nebraska. And then they just get plowed by Oklahoma the rest of the game. So, I mean, I don't really have any bets, and I lean to the under here just because I think Nebraska kind of gets shut down eventually as this game goes on. But I wonder if it's a spot where you could even like bet like Nebraska money line first quarter as just like a fun little bet there. But in the big picture, I see Oklahoma taking care of business and kind of snuffing Nebraska out a bit. I think the total is a bit too high, so I lean to the under in this game and to the Oklahoma side on the spread.
Yeah, and just for you guys, if you guys are watching on YouTube, please make sure you smash the like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. And then also, like, make sure you guys are checking out Scores and Odds. As you see here, it's a great tool to sit there and pick your different lines. As you can see on FanDuel, we have it at 10.5. A lot of other books, we have it at 11.5. So you're getting a full point by playing this bet on FanDuel in comparison to other books. So using the Scores and Odds tools, you can find different line movements, you can find different totals, and you can find different amounts at different books. And it's really helpful in terms of finding that. So make sure you guys are checking that out as well. All right, next game, we have Purdue traveling to Syracuse. This game is a 1-point game. As you can see on Scores and Odds, we have a pick already in. Oh, look who it is by. Alex Hardin, why don't you take this game to start?
Yeah, I think Syracuse is just running so good offensively, and I do think their offense is decent, but Schrader to me is a regression candidate for sure. Like he's like an 80% completion rate and thrown 5 touchdowns on like 48 passes, no interceptions. So he's had a great start to the season, but they really haven't been tested at all. I think Purdue has a sneaky good defense, like borderline top 25, and they're just better offensively, better defensively, and I don't know why this is a pick 'em. I would have Purdue favored by at least a field goal. So Purdue is going to be one of my favorite plays of the day, which makes it tricky for daily fantasy when Schrader's so cheap. But that's a different discussion for a different show. But yeah, just in general, I like Purdue here in this spot. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't agree with you fully. I think Schrader's been very good. I think Syracuse is a better team than what we would give them credit for from their typical lack of defense and sort of not great offense. But I think Schrader's been really good. I think the new offense has helped Schrader. I think it's helped Sean Tucker. Sean Tucker's been involved in the pass game a lot more. The issue is that I do think could play in your favor here is Purdue's defense, I think, is pretty solid. I think Purdue's defense could shut down a Syracuse team that really only has two options. It's going to be either Sean Tucker getting the ball in the run game or like a quick little out of the backfield, or it's going to be Schrader running the ball. Outside of that, they don't have tons of great offensive options there. And with that, I think Purdue has a chance to shut that down. So I definitely don't like Purdue per se here. I probably would stay away from this game comparatively to you. Like I know you like it a little bit more, but I would probably stay away. The total at 58.5, I'd probably stay away from that too. Like I think both defenses are decent. If anything, I would lean on the under, but I'm not super interested in this game. I think that this is probably a stay away situation from me, but I could see Purdue winning. I definitely am not saying they can't win. I just think that it's a situation where it's probably a bit closer than you think, and I would stay away. All right, next game on slate, we have BYU going to Oregon to face the Ducks. I like Oregon here. I know we typically do not like Oregon and think Oregon is typically a pretty poor team, but I think they're better than BYU. We don't know if Nakua is going to be back. We don't know if Romney is going to be back. If those two are out, those are the two biggest playmakers on the offense. The backfield is much worse without Allgaier. Christopher Brooks is just not as good of a back as Allgaier, and then Katoa is Katoa, what he was last year, which is not bad, but just not an explosive offensive weapon. I think Oregon's a much better team. We know they obviously had a very difficult matchup in which they got blown out, which was expected by us. But I do think Oregon's probably a better team. Getting this game at home is a favorable situation. So I think they should probably be closer to a touchdown or 10-point favorite here than a 3-point favorite. So this is probably going to end up being one of my picks for the week. What's your thoughts here on this one?
Ooh, I lean BYU. I think BYU is a better team on neutral field. I do have concerns playing at Oregon. It's a pretty good home field advantage relative to others. BYU just seems to always have their stuff together pretty early in the season. They play with a lot of energy. And the question for me is like how good is their defense really? Because some preliminary numbers have them being pretty strong this year, and that was kind of to be expected, but I'm not sure how good. So that's kind of the question mark here. Oregon still seems like kind of a mess offensively. Like there's so much rotation. Bo Nix at the helm. Like they could easily struggle in this game, but I mean, we haven't seen much of them this season, and they had to play Georgia one game that almost doesn't even count for them. So it should be a really good game. Should be a pretty tight game, but I do lean to the BYU side.
Yeah, I will say bonus play here for me is I do like the under in this game. I think both defenses are solid enough. I think the offenses may struggle. So when you have the total here at like 58-ish, I like the total in this game as the under. So I definitely think that's a bonus for me. I might even play 2 spots on that game because I think both are reasonably favorable. All right, next game up, we have my Penn State Nittany Lions traveling to Auburn to face Auburn. I'm a little bit worried about this game, not going to lie. I think that Auburn, one of the main reasons I am concerned is TJ Finley is terrible. And I have let everyone know TJ Finley is terrible for his entire career and bashed him.
He's coming for you.
He's coming for me. So this is a spot where I'm like, I've said how terrible this guy is for his like entire career, and he is going to come out and just obliterate me. So I definitely am worried about this game. I will not touch it this week. I think that Penn State's a better team. I do think Penn State's a better team. I think they have better pieces, but I think the Auburn defense is good enough to slow down the Penn State defense, and I think Auburn is literally just going to feed Tank Bigsby the ball. And I think Tank Bigsby is good enough to at least move the ball and generate some offense for Auburn to where this is going to be a very low-scoring game most likely, and it's going to be probably a touchdown game or less either way. So I don't like either side because I don't want Auburn. Like I think TJ Finley is by far the worst quarterback in this game. Like the quarterback play, Clifford's much better. Drew Alar is much better. I don't think that it's a situation where it's a spot where Finley's just terrible. He's really awful. So I'm just gonna keep it going while we're at it. So what's your thoughts on this game as a unbiased third party, Alex?
I think it's gonna be a really ugly game. And I don't have a good read on Auburn this year at all. So I'll, with that saying, like, and you never really know what you're going to get with Penn State offensively. I think regardless, like Penn State's defense is going to travel here. And if they can shut down Bigsby to an extent, like I don't see Auburn putting up a lot of points. It's just a matter of how Clifford can move the ball and if they're able to run the ball at all. Because we saw at times last year where they just absolutely struggled to do anything on the ground. They have better backs this year, but they probably still have the same offensive line issues. But I really don't have a lean here at all. Should be a tight game, but my number is slightly lean to Auburn +3, but that's more of just it being at Auburn, but they're really close teams.
Yeah, this game was at Penn State. I feel pretty confident Penn State would win. But traveling to Auburn, I think that Auburn is the inferior team, but I think that gives enough to be a close spot. Like I probably would lean Auburn if I was being unbiased here. I think it's going to be, like you said, a pretty ugly game. I think there's not going to be tons of points. And it's really like, I think the key to this game is going to be like, there's going to be like one turnover where a team turns the ball over at like their own 20. And whoever does that's going to lose the game.
Yeah. So I'm just surprised that it's a full field goal. Like I thought it would be probably like Penn State -1 or pick 'em. Like and like even like on FanDuel you can get Auburn +3.5. Like that's a bit appealing to me.
Yeah, that extra half point on FanDuel is definitely a favorable number in my opinion.
But yeah.
Yep. It's a tough game. All right, next game we have Mississippi State traveling to LSU to play LSU. We have it around a pick 'em. It's about -2 right now. I think the Mississippi State's a better team here. I think Mississippi State is likely to win this game. That said, I feel like LSU maybe is going to right the ship a little bit and people might care. We obviously had a bit of a revolt because Brian Kelly is not the best coach of all time. And I guess the team is realizing that.
It's such a weird fit for LSU. Like it's just so weird.
Awful fit. I don't understand it. I think there's coaches out there, which you and I have talked about before, are just terrible and just don't make sense. Like Jimbo at Texas A&M can't really make much less sense than Jimbo. The guy is the most dull coach ever. His offense is terrible.
But it's complicated, PSU. You just have to learn it.
Yeah, they need to. Yeah, you need to learn it, and then it's still terrible. They need to spend some of that NIL money instead of on players on Jimbo's buyout. That would be a better option for them.
That's a hefty, yeah.
Anyways, back to this game, -2. Probably stay away from me overall. I don't love either side of this game. I do think Mississippi State's probably better, but going to LSU is going to be a difficult task. What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's another game where I think the line is pretty much correct. And it's one of those, we get a lot of these situations where I think the better team is on the road, but they're only better by like a field goal and it's kind of offset by the home field advantage. So it turns into a lot of these like just pick 'em spots. And I don't love to lean into a bunch of road short favorites, but it's kind of shaping up that way on this slate of games. I lean Mississippi State here. But I think it's definitely a bounce back spot for LSU to figure some things out. And we know that they have the athletes and stuff. So it should be another tight game where I don't have a strong opinion on, but it should be good to watch.
I agree. All right, next game, Texas Tech traveling to NC State to play NC State. Texas Tech struggled last week to move the ball. They said that both quarterbacks were going to play. However, Donovan Smith played the whole game and had 21 carries. And overall, Texas Tech ran the ball or ran 105 plays, which is an obnoxious thing to do. So I like NC State, but it's probably right around 10.5 that I'd like it at that point. So I probably won't touch that. I like the over, however. The new Texas Tech offense plays incredibly fast, and there's likely to be points in this game, whether it's via NC State or Texas Tech. I think NC State's the better team, but I think Texas Tech can still move the ball. There is a possibility that NC State could blow them out here. So I would lean NC State in terms of the side, but I do like the total. I like the over 55.5. I think that there could be points scored in this game because if nothing else, like there was 190 plays last week in the Texas Tech game. Granted, it went to double overtime, but even if you remove double overtime, like there was 170 or so plays. Like there was just a load of plays. So what's your thoughts on this one, Alex?
I like the Texas Tech offensive scheme that Kitley's bringing. I don't love the personnel with Donovan Smith playing quarterback right now in the sense that I think he's going to make a lot of mistakes. Like you alluded to, like he ran the ball a ton just because like he drops back. He doesn't see anything. He runs, like he made some mistakes. And I think kind of the thing we should look at last week is like Houston's not a good defense this year. NC State's an elite defense. Like I don't think he'll have the luxury of like all those bailout like runs and opportunities and second chances as last week. I think they get like kind of slaughtered here. My numbers don't lean NC State, but I kind of do. I don't love it. It's a lot of points, but I think Texas Tech will struggle more offensively, make more mistakes that they get paid for than last week. But they'll still move the ball to an extent because they're going to throw so much. But I think NC State is in a good spot here.
Yeah, of all games, like if you told me this game was like NC State wins by 30 on Monday next week, I'm like, yeah, okay, I could picture that. Right?
It might be a spot where you like even shop for some alt lines, like take NC State minus 17 instead. And get paid off for being right if you are.
Like NC State wins this game, it's probably going to be by a lot, right? Like not like, I mean, yes, they could win by 10 points too, but like I think there's a pretty realistic outcome here that NC State wins by like 4 touchdowns. If things are going bad for Texas Tech, they're likely to be very bad. And NC State's going to move the ball. Like NC State, I am not envisioning having issues moving the ball. So it's like a situation where if Texas Tech struggles, it could get ugly in this game. So I actually like that call on the alt lines. I think that you could look for some alt lines on NC State. Look for like NC State minus like 23 or something. Like just random alt lines that are high Texas Tech win amounts. So definitely.
Yeah, you spread them out and do a little bit on each one so you get paid off as it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just like escalator it up and just make sure you're winning amounts at each level. Like literally just take alt lines from like 15 up to like 30 and just like bet a little bit on each alt line. So if they win by 24, you still are going to win a good chunk, but not as much obviously if you just bet 25 where like you would then lose. So yeah, definitely look for alt lines. I like that call. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. All right, next game we have Michigan State traveling to Washington. I don't really love either team here, as we'll see. You obviously do like Michigan State. For me, I'd probably lean Washington if I was going to take a side. Rome Odunze was injured last week, but he is returning or likely to return this week. I don't love what I've seen out of Michigan State thus far this year. So that's why I would probably lean Washington here. But again, I don't love this game on either way. So what's your thoughts here?
I just don't know how Michigan State is a dog here. Yeah, like Washington has a new coaching staff, like they have the Fresno State head coach, but they played Kent State and Portland State. Like Kent State's like one of the worst defenses in the country. Portland State's not as in the FCS school. Like I'm not going to be fooled by Michael Penix, like that he's some elite quarterback now. I just think it's going to take time for him to build up the program, and Michigan State's probably further along. I like them on the offensive and defensive lines. I think they can kind of control the line of scrimmage. Last year, Washington was like 109th versus the run, and that's what Michigan State's going to do here. They're definitely on team establish it, and they have some talented transfers with Berger and Broussard. So I think it's a game where Michigan State can kind of run all over them. Like I'm all over Michigan State here, plus the points, money line, anything. Like I think they just come out and kind of dominate Washington a bit. So that's kind of, it might be a bit of a hot take, but that's one of my stronger positions this week.
Yeah, and to note, like it opened as a pick'em, it's moved to 3.5. So like
so I'm obviously missing something here, but I'm okay being on an island. I just don't think things are being properly accounted for in terms of what's happened so far this season.
Yeah. All right. Next game, we have SMU versus your Maryland Terrapins. Looking at this game, we're going to have another quarterback that's not going to fool you into thinking they're elite with Talia Tagovailoa. And you actually like the under in this game. So why don't you start with this game as it's your team?
I just think it's too many points in terms of the total. However, it's pretty terrifying playing an under with SMU involved, and then you throw in Maryland's high-powered passing game. It could not bode well for that, but I think it's just too many points looking at my numbers. So that kind of blindly playing it there. In terms of the actual game, I think SMU's defense is going to be slightly improved from last year. I still don't trust the Maryland team. So if I were forced to pick a side, I would probably take SMU in the points. But it should be an entertaining game. Probably a bit. I probably hate on Maryland more than I'm biased in their favor generally. So I don't know. I like the under in SMU. So we'll see how that plays out.
you just watch too many Maryland losses by like 60 points over the last 3 years. Like you get your hopes up and then Maryland loses by 60 for like 5 straight games. So it's a situation where I think you've just been beaten into submission a little bit there. I actually probably would lean Maryland. I think Maryland's probably a slightly better team. They've returned so many guys that I think that there's going to be enough offense here for Maryland to win. I think there's enough firepower on that side for them to win. SMU is without Jake Bailey. He's supposed to be one of their new weapons. He's out. They've been relying heavily on Rasheed Rice. Rasheed Rice has been getting a lot of targets for them in the offense. I do think they'll be able to score against Maryland. Maryland's defense is nothing special here, but I'd lean Maryland, but not something that I'm probably likely to play. This is actually probably the game I'm most looking forward to of the weekend. Should be a lot of points in this game. It's the 8 p.m. game. It's prime or 7:30, which is not normal for Maryland to get a primetime spot, but
it's on FS1. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, on FS1, but it's a situation where I do like Maryland. I like this game. I think it's going to be a fun game. Both teams should move the ball, and both teams should play relatively quick. So I like this game probably more than most of the others because should be a lot more points in it than others. All right, next game we get to go talk about Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M against Miami. I actually like Texas A&M here. I think Texas A&M minus 5-ish is a much better bet than touching Miami. Look, I think Texas A&M have some major issues. Those issues are their coaching staff is terrible and their offensive game plan is atrocious. But their defense is still really, really good. So I think I like Texas A&M here. I like them giving 5 points. I think that they will win this game. I don't think Miami is special. I think with this game being at Texas A&M, it's another thing in their favor. So what's your thoughts here? This game's also late. Surprisingly, we're seeing this game at 9 p.m. at night.
Yeah. I don't have a strong take. I have a slight lean on the over. I was kind of surprised it was that the number was that low. Texas A&M's defense is great, but like that's just a pretty low total for two teams who could score a bit. I think I might have Miami's offense a bit overrated, but I think they can score a few touchdowns here. And obviously, there's some big play potential on the Texas A&M side. It's not been great so far, but they have some game breakers and like Aeneas Smith and Achane. So
yeah, like they have game breakers, right? Like they have guys that can just obliterate, but like the offense is so dull. It's just such a bad offense, and it doesn't help that I do think that the quarterback play is really terrible. It's just really not good. It doesn't get the job done. That's a big issue for them. And also, like their O-line, like Sam Houston State dominated the O-line in the first half of the game. Like every time Achane got the ball, he was touched like 3 yards in the backfield. So it's definitely a bit concerning, but I'm hopeful that they are going to turn things around. If they don't, like this could be a situation where Jimbo's fired in season, I think, because it could get pretty rough. Like if they cannot score, they're susceptible to lose every single game. And playing in the SEC, like they could lose like 6 games, which with the amount of money that they've thrown at their players, I don't think the donors are going to be feeling too good about that.
No.
All right, last game of the night, we have Fresno State traveling to USC. This is a game that is going to be explosive. We see USC here being minus 14.5 to open. It's moved to 12.5. The total 73.5, which based on what I saw last week, USC's defense was just getting the ball moved against them by Stanford, and Fresno State probably has better offense. We see multiple picks here. We see you on two sides in this game. You're hating on USC, so why don't you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, continue my USC hate. No, I like the under, and I like Fresno State plus the points. Like USC has played Stanford and Rice so far. Like Stanford is a terrible defense now. Like they've had good defenses in the past. They're in like the 80s in terms of defensive efficiency this year. Like they're not a good defense, and they played Rice, who's like the very bottom of the barrel defense. So USC offense has a lot of great pieces. They're going to be good this year, but I don't know how good. Fresno is going to be the best defense they faced so far, and Fresno's not even great, but they're still better than those other two teams. I just think they're getting a bit, I don't know, overrated still in terms of the numbers. Fresno has a lot of weapons offensively. I think they can score a bit. Like USC's defense is not good. Like I watched Rice move the ball on them. I watched Stanford move the ball up and down the field on them. Stanford didn't convert enough in the red zone to keep that game super close, but USC's defense is going to give up big plays. They're going to give up yards. They're going to give up points. I like Fresno State to hang around in this game. And So 12.5 is too many points for me. So I like Fresno State in the points, and then the over 73.5. USC games have been kind of buoyed by like defensive touchdowns. I don't know. It's a big number. I show value on the under, so I'm going to kind of blindly play that as well.
Yeah, this game's probably a stay away for me. I will say Fresno State will take this as their Super Bowl. Like, this is the big game for Fresno State to win, whereas USC could overlook them. But watching that game last week, like, USC offense looked great. They actually used Addison properly. Addison went nuclear in the game. He looked great. They were just able to move the ball. Like, yes, you said Stanford's defense is bad. Fresno State's defense isn't great. I think USC will be able to move the ball. But I don't think Fresno State's bad either, and USC's defense is not good, and they're going to move the ball too. So it makes me not like the total. I don't really want to go over on this total. I also don't really want to go on either side. I think it could be pretty good. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for us this week for all the games. So a quick rundown of bets that we're going to take this week. I am going to take Texas A&M -5 on DraftKings. I think the Texas A&M wins that game. I think that they're a much better team than Maryland or than Miami, even with their issues that they have. I'm going to take the Maryland Terrapins -3.5 just to make Alex feel some pain by winning a game with Maryland. That's why I'm going that one. And then I like the Texas Tech NC State over 55.5. I actually really like Alex's alt line calls. I think the alt lines are a great way to attack that game because I think there's definitely a path where NC State just obliterates them. So, Alex, what bets do you have for this week?
All right. So I have Purdue +1 on DraftKings. Fresno State +12.5. You can get that on DK or FanDuel. And then Michigan State plus, I think let's see if there's still a 3.5 out there hanging out. 3.5 on FanDuel. So Purdue +1, Fresno State +12.5, Michigan State +3.5 are my three plays.
Let's see if Alex can make up any more ground on me this week. Hopefully Maryland is able to pull out a win for me so I can taunt him about that next week. For the overall records, I'm 4-1-1 through 2 weeks. Alex is 2-4 through 2 weeks. That's going to wrap it up for us this week. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please make sure you smash the like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. We'll be back with you guys next week for another set of games going into week 4. So good luck to you guys all this weekend. We hope you guys get a lot of winners out there. We'll see you guys next week.